let's go to the Gatsby Twitter, and we will share that. All right, we are live. So, John, can you give me a quick sound check, make sure that I got everything coming in the way that we need it to?
Check, check.
There we go. All right. Cool, man. So thanks for coming on with me today. I am super pumped to be kind of talking about themes, because this is something that I think opens a lot of really cool doors, and that gives us some really just like kind of next level opportunities with Gatsby. So do you want to maybe start by just talking a little bit about like some of the questions that we got were like, how is a theme different from a starter? And so for people who are familiar, Gatsby starters are the way that like now you would say, you know, Gatsby new my blog, and then we use a starter to like build some code for you. So how is a theme different from that?
Yeah, so a theme kind of ultimately operates very similarly to a starter, except that you can kind of build it as a library. So that way, like a starter with themes can actually just end up installing a theme and configure that theme. And so all of your kind of initially like scaffolded out content is still like there. So like your blog posts, if you install, you know, the Gatsby starter blog, but all of the actual implementation is bundled up as an actual theme. And so it's kind of like a prepackaged Gatsby site. And so this allows you when you want to like sort of update your theme and add some new functionality or like fix a bug, all the users of that theme just have to kind of npm update, and they'll be able to kind of pull in that new feature or that bug fix. And so it kind of allows you to reuse the functionality, but you can kind of like spread it out. So you don't have to actually pull in all of the actual Gatsby config code and the Gatsby node and all that kind of stuff. So it allows you to get up and running just as quickly as with a starter, but it provides that sort of upgrade path and sort of hides that complexity from you until you decide that you want it.
Cool. That is awesome. So how will we start with making one of these? So I think our goal today is, you know, we're not going to build anything intense. We're just going to put together a kind of a simple base theme. We're going to build a site using that base theme. And if we have time, we'll play with some kind of cool other ideas of other ways that we could do this.
Yeah, so I think initially we'll create a new directory, and then we can actually then do an npm init to actually create a package JSON, and we can use that to sort of create a Yarn workspace. So that way we can start building a theme as a package, and then in another directory, leverage, like sort of use it as an end user. So it kind of, it's in its own directory, like installs the theme, and the Yarn workspaces will magically link the two, which will allow us to sort of, you know, push updates and actually see it live in the, you know, as the end user or the starter.
Yeah. How do I get this to go? Okay. I have the very helpful Zoom bar is like floating over all my stuff. Okay, so looking at this, what we need to do is to do a workspace. We can actually delete all of this, yeah?
Pretty much. I think it might want the name and version, but pretty much the rest of that isn't needed. So I would just grab from description down and yeah, nuke all that stuff. So it's a nice, simple package JSON. And then from there, we just then add the workspaces key, which is an array. And we can give it, we'll call, I guess, one directory will be the starter. So you can just say starter. And then we can say, so that will, you know, link that. So that directory will kind of be a project. And then we can do packages / and then the asterisk. And so this will link everything that we put in the packages directory, which will be our Gatsby theme.
And when you say starter, is this going to be like the site we build?
Yeah, so that will be just like a directory that has its own package JSON, which installs our theme. And then so when we can run, you know, like Yarn workspace starter start, and that will, you know, execute Gatsby, or yeah, so we call it. That's good
Yeah,
too.
I think I'm gonna call it site because that like other that doesn't my brain doesn't like calling it a starter.
Yeah, no, yeah. Anything,
Okay,
yeah.
so then we also need to make their site and make their packages, and then inside packages. Oops, inside packages. Oh my god. There we go. We're going to make a theme. Is that right?
Yeah, we'll call it, I don't know, Gatsby
Let's call
theme.
it Gatsby theme. Call it live stream.
That's perfect. And
And
then, yeah, then I would probably go into that, yep, right in there, do another npm and or yarn init.
okay, so we want that. We're gonna call this 0.0.1. Gatsby theme we built live. And so the entry point, this is the one that I think is kind of interesting. So do we want to do like an index.js? Are we going to be exporting anything from the theme? Or, well, actually, can you talk about why this is important in the first place?
Yeah, so the entry point is actually what Gatsby uses, well, Node in general too. So when we attempt to resolve the package, the entry point is kind of the way where when we check to make sure Gatsby theme live stream exists when we build the site, we actually use that entry point to resolve it. And so by default, Node will always look for the index.js. So a lot of the times you'll see in like Gatsby plugins that there's just kind of like that empty index.js file that's kind of like a no-op. But another way you can kind of also do it is just specify Gatsby config, since we will have that and that file will exist. So then we'll just check, oh, yep, we can resolve that theme, so we'll be happy and kind of go along our way. But if we decide from our theme we want to like export components, like so if we want to like export a box, then we can actually do that from the index.js. So we can then sort of like leave it as is and then kind of create that file. So ultimately, you either need to specify your main or your entry point, or ensure that there is an index.js file.
All right, let's reserve the right to export some components. So we'll keep it as component.js, and I will set up the repository stuff later, set up the author stuff later, and we might publish that. So let's do that. Okay, and then we need to do the same thing for our site. So we're just going to get this initialized, and this is going to be live stream theme demo site. That's also
we might actually want, well, I guess we can go back and we might want to make the name just like site. So that way when we run the workspace, it's shorter, but that's
for the, yeah. Okay. Site we built on the live stream about Gatsby themes. Okay, this entry point kind of doesn't matter, but we'll set it as Gatsby config.js just in case. We'll set up the repository and this stuff later. And this one we're not going to publish as a package, so we will mark it as true. Okay, so let's move back in here because it's a little easier to see what's going on. So what we've created now is we have our workspaces repo, which is looking for a site and packages. And so we have a package here, which we'll rename that to site. And we'll talk about why when we first start it. But then we have our actual theme. And if I pull this out a little bit more, you can see Gatsby theme live stream lives in the packages directory, and it has this package, which is pretty simple right now. So what are our next steps? How do we move on from here?
Yeah, so what I would typically do now is let's get kind of the site sort of configured, so that way we can then start building the theme. And so when we're at a point where we can sort of actually run the site, that will be good to go. So if we go to the site packages JSON, we can add the dependencies of both Gatsby and the Gatsby theme live stream.
Okay, so we're going to install. Sorry, I looked at the chat for a second and I 100% missed what you just said. I apologize.
I should also be paying attention to that, shouldn't I? But yeah, so I think what you could just do is yarn workspace site add Gatsby.
Site add Gatsby. Do I need to add anything else?
No, because then we can add in the Gatsby theme installation manually. So you can just give it the asterisks just for now, since that'll make things simplest. And so we'll go ahead and run this install.
Okay.
And so, yeah.
And so what's cool about this too is like, so because we use the workspaces here, we can call each of these directories. And so we were able to say yarn workspace, and then we called site. And that's why we needed to change this, because otherwise we would have had to type out like live stream demo theme site or whatever. And then we can run regular yarn commands. So like yarn add Gatsby, but since we're doing it through the workspace, it kind of builds out this whole thing for us. But it does update the sites that we need. So like Gatsby gets added here. And then you said we need to manually add the theme?
Yeah, and then from here we can just do Gatsby theme live stream, and then just give it the star. Yeah. And so now, like once we're kind of like a little farther down and ready, we can just say yarn, and the workspace will automatically link it to our local package. And one thing while we're in the site package JSON, we could also just add our start scripts, so that way we can kind of be done in the site's package JSON. So yeah, we'll just do start and then our dep develop, yep, and Gatsby develop.
And I guess we'll do a build, Gatsby build, and I think that's all we need for now, right? Well,
yep. Okay. So yeah, once we're ready, then we can say yarn workspace site develop, and it will actually run that script and build the site with Gatsby that pulls in the Gatsby theme live stream.
Cool.
So for essentially now we have the actual site part ready, so we're good to build the theme.
Okay, and then what do we want to do in the theme? Let me move up a level here. So we're in our themes directory, sitting on top of this. Do we have is it a peer dependency, a regular dependency to get Gatsby into the theme?
Yeah, for Gatsby, typically the best way I would say is as a peer dependency. And so then, we can, if you're developing the theme locally, you can use either like a yarn workspace that actually installs Gatsby elsewhere, or you can install it as like a dev dependency, but yeah.
Okay, and so I'm doing yarn workspace, Gatsby theme live stream add, and then do I do Gatsby like dev? Wait, is that right? -D?
I think it's -large D, yeah.
Okay, let's see if I remember how yarn works.
Yeah, the ultimate test. So this install should be nice and fast too, because the workspace, we already have it installed. Like the Gatsby, the yarn workspace installed Gatsby at the root node module, so it just basically just needs to go ahead and link it really quickly. So it's almost like a no-op. And so yeah, here we have Gatsby, the dev dependency and the peer dependency set. So that way, if a user installs the theme, it will like warn them if they don't already have Gatsby installed.
Cool. Any other peer dependencies that we need for a theme, like React or anything like that?
Yeah, we'll also add React and React DOM.
Okay, so let's do probably just the same thing, right, for React and React DOM?
Yeah, we just need them in the dev, and then also specify those as peer dependencies, because Gatsby is designed to let you sort of BYO React. So you can, that's why like hooks essentially work right out of the box, because you can kind of specify which version of React that you want.
Oh crap, I did hold on. Don't save, go back in here, there it is. I forgot to save before I ran that command. So let me fix that. And peer dependencies, and look at that, we got 16.8.1, we can run hooks. There's a question in the chat about that as well. So yeah, hooks definitely work in Gatsby. And we have some examples of those. We're actually going to do a live stream specifically about hooks next week, so I'm not going to talk about them here. All right, so we've got Gatsby installed. We've got React installed. They're set up as peer dependencies. With them being peer dependencies, that probably means I also need to install them in the site, yeah?
Oh, yeah. you know, that's the missing piece that we forgot.
Okay, so yarn, workspace, add, site, React, and
Site.
React. Oh yeah. Glad you're paying attention. Site add.
Yeah, it's a lot easier for me to watch you as you have all the pressure. I just critique. You swap those.
Perfect. That's what I need, is somebody to just watch me and tell me when I'm doing it wrong. All right, so we have a site. The site has Gatsby, our theme, React, and React DOM. So let's build a theme, yeah?
Yeah, I think we're ready to go.
All right, what's my first step?
So I think the first part that we're going to want to do is, I guess, create source pages and actually, like, I guess, programmatically create those pages. So that way, or using the plugin, so that way we can ensure that you know, they're being linked, because by default Gatsby will only look in source pages for the site, so like as the end user of the theme. And so since we're also wanting to create pages from inside the theme, we have to use the Gatsby plugin page creator as well.
And I just realized that we set the package.json to look for index, and then I forgot to create it. So I created that, and then we're going to do MDX because MDX is rad. And you're going to have to walk me through how to set up MDX, which should be a good time.
Yeah, so I think for now, just so we have some content on that page, we can just do like a pound and just add some title, you know, site title or hello world or something. And so
let's keep it very programmery. Hello world.
Programmer. There we go. And so now what we'll also need to do is add Gatsby MDX as a dependency, since that's kind of the Gatsby's magical integration with MDX. And so by default, it will know when it sees an MDX page, Gatsby MDX knows how to transform that and to render it.
Okay, and so now we need a Gatsby config. And in this, start with just plugins. And do we need any special config for the Gatsby MDX?
Not to start, so we can just say Gatsby. Well, we will want to add some options, so I think, yeah, we can go ahead and do the more verbose way.
Okay.
And then just options for now can be an empty object.
Okay. And we don't need any other config for the moment?
We will also need to add the Gatsby plugin page creator, I think it's called. So we'll actually, so when the theme is built, it says to also look in this local source pages of that theme.
And so what that page creator does is it makes sure that we read from a package, because by default, when we run the site, it's only going to look in source pages here. So if we want this page to get built, we would need to add something, and that's what the Gatsby plugin page creator does. So let's look at that real quick. Gatsby plugin page creator. So we just need to get this installed and point it to our directory.
Yep.
So let's do that. Gatsby plugin page creator. There's a question in the chat about Gatsby MDX. In the theme, is Gatsby MDX a dependency or a dev dependency?
Typically, you'll probably want it to be a dependency, because that way, unless you want like the end user to install it and kind of bring their own. So really, it's kind of up to what you want as a theme author. But I think for most purposes, you can kind of just install it as the theme, as a dependency of the theme. So you kind of don't need to, you know, tell your users necessarily to know how to install that as well. But that can really go either way. And actually, one thing that it does remind me too is that we also need to install MDX and MDX tag. We'll also need those libraries because Gatsby MDX doesn't install those by default. It lets you kind of bring your own versions. And so I think a lot of the times, similarly to React, you might want to make the MDX core libraries sort of bring your own dependencies too. But that's kind of, I guess, still sort of up to you.
Okay. So we need to read some docs.
Yeah, if you go to the get started at the top, that will bring you to the installation.
Hold
you
on.
Can skip down to.
This is amazing. Does everybody see this backpack? It gets excited when we get started. That is awesome. Did you build this?
No, I believe Chris built that. So it's
Oh man, that is that. Shout out to Chris Biscardi for a delightful little piece of UI there. All right, so I need.
You can go actually down to the second section since we're kind of like adding it to an existing site, aka our theme.
Okay, so we're going to install MDX.js MDX and MDX.js tag. So we're going to go up and we're adding this to our theme. So Yarn Workspace, Gatsby theme livestream add MDX and the tag. And fortunately, my internet is going nice and snappy today, so we're doing all right. So we've got that. All right, so then what? We've got the page creator set up. We've got MDX set up. Do we need to do anything else, or do we just? Or I guess we can just tell the site to use the theme and let it rip.
Yeah, I think so. I think we're now ready to let it rock. So if we can go back to the terminal and kind of, we can run yarn one more time to make sure that site is linked to the Gatsby theme that we've created.
And I think we check that with Yarn Workspace's info, right? Yes. And so what that shows us is our workspace dependencies. We get Gatsby theme livestream. And then over here, we don't have any like workspace dependencies. Everything is just in its own thing. So that's a little handy tip if you're working with workspaces to figure out what you're actually resolving locally. Cool. So then let's see. I just need to add a Gatsby config to the site, and that's our last step before we let this run the first time.
Yeah, and fingers crossed.
All right. So module.exports. What do we do here?
So now we'll actually specify that we're using a theme, and since there's still sort of an alpha phase, it's the key that we'll give it is __ experimental themes. And it works kind of like the same sort of API as like plugins, where we give it like an array, and so now we can just specify our theme, Gatsby theme livestream.
Okay. All right, fingers crossed, everyone. Let's see if this works. We are going to do yarn workspace site develop. Oh, what's running at another port? Hold on. 1 second, please. I apparently have something else running. Let's try that one more time. There we go. All right, so no immediate crashes. That's a good sign.
Yeah, we seem to be building.
Oh, there we go. All right, so let's just play a little bit, make sure that this is doing what we want it to do. Where's my? There we go. We can go over to our index.mdx. And is that going to work? It's going to work. So we have our theme, which is here. That theme is being resolved in here. And that gives us a working Gatsby site, which is, whoops, what am I, there's the button I was trying to hit. So this is pretty awesome. Like we've basically put ourselves in a position where this can be published as an NPM package. And then we as like theme developers or like site developers, we don't need to configure that stuff, that MDX step, that like React page creator, like all these sorts of things. They don't have to exist. We just install this and we're good to go. And so can I override this this index.mdx with no changes? Like I can just add a source folder?
Yeah. So yeah, from the site, so like the end user's perspective, you can just create a source pages index.mdx, and the way Gatsby will resolve it, it'll see like this one sort of takes precedence, and so that like this will be like the actual page that's rendered. And so yeah, I can kind of get writing. And so yeah, the really cool part about this is that the end user kind of just has to write some MDX pages, and they don't really kind of even need to like know how Gatsby works or to do like GraphQL queries and stuff. So it kind of allows you to kind of just get started until you sort of want to customize things and get more specific or kind of create your own implementations of things.
Yeah, and so just to like really drive this point home, like if you're looking at this, this is the site you would create. So if you're using a theme, you would create this folder, you would install a theme, and then all you need is a package.json, a Gatsby config, and a folder full of pages. And if the theme was set up to read from a different set of pages, like would that be even, like you wouldn't even necessarily need like source pages. You could literally just have like top level MDX, right?
Yeah, you can kind of source from wherever you want. So it's something too where like if you have a docs directory and you want to build like a doc site for a library, you can kind of just install a theme that knows I'm going to create every MDX page that I find in the docs directory. It will turn those to pages. So you can do the same with like posts or for a blog or anything like that.
Very, very cool. So let's play with a couple cool things that I think are like really exciting about this. The first thing is like let's make this look kind of nice. So what I'm going to do to start is I'm just going to delete this directory because I want to play with the theme first. And so this should take us back to, let's see, do something to cause it to rewrite here.
Yeah, I think we might need to
I got to restart.
Cache.
Oh yeah.
That's fine to.
Let's see, we're doing site cache, and then we can do Yarn Workspace's site develop.
Yeah, because Gatsby just sees these pages suddenly disappear, so it gets confused and stuck.
Okay, so so the first thing that I think would be good is let's add like a layout here, and so our layout is going to live in components.layout.js, and here we're going to import React, and let's see. Going to pull in. We want the children, right? Or is there something special with MDX that I'm not remembering?
No, it'll be the children. So it'll kind of just speaks normal React.
Okay, so let's do a section, and for the sake of not having to set anything up, let's do like CSS-in-JS here. We're gonna do max width of 650 pixels. We'll do a margin 0 auto, or maybe, and what else do we need? Anything else? I think we can probably leave it there, yeah? Set up children. And let's see, there's a question in the chat. Where would the pages live? Could we put demo pages in the theme and then their work to be overridden in the site? Absolutely. That's actually what we just did with the index.mdx here. As soon as we added an index.mdx in the site, it took over, and so we had the new page. So we've deleted that so that we can work on the defaults of the theme. But that's that's kind of the whole idea, is that like you as a theme author could build a default experience, and then the person using the theme can take the inspiration from that and create their own pages that override the default, so that they're able to kind of create their own experience using the tools in the theme. Yeah, so let's see. We've got our layout. All right, so this is probably fine to start with. It's not going to do much, but that's okay. What do we want to do to actually get MDX to use this?
Yeah, so the way Gatsby MDX can kind of, you can tell it the actual layouts that you want to target. So in your Gatsby config, I'll actually look up the docs really quick. I believe it's the default layouts option. Yeah, so in the options, which page is it on? I have like an example pulled up instead, but where? Where are the default layouts located?
I know there's a list of, maybe it's just not working on, oh, we lose the, we got to put a expander on here. So I need the API reference, plugin options. And so we want default layouts.
Yep. And so in there, you can then specify a default key, which will then, and we can require.resolve that to the layout. And so that will just ensure that whenever MDX renders the pages, it will use that as the layout.
So I'm going source, components, layout. Okay, that is a little hard to see, so let me make this a little easier. So what we've just done is in the options we set a default layout, and we want by default to use the layout component that we just created. So if I save that, and go back over here. Do we need to reboot it to get it to?
I think since it's in the config, we might need to reboot it.
Try again. Okay, so something happened. Did we get our layout?
Yeah, I think. Yeah,
so we did. Did I just not make it? There we go. So it's now doing its thing. We've got a section. It is doing the margins that we wanted. That's all the things that we wanted it to do. And so if I wanted to make that look less terrible, what I could probably do is say, I know I said I wasn't going to write CSS on here. I always do this. I'm like, oh, I can get away with just making this ugly, and then I cannot, my, what? Why aren't you working? There we go. My brain won't let me do it. So now, yeah, now it doesn't do that ugly smash against the left thing.
You've achieved perfection now. Beautiful. We should give it the some system UI font though. That times
oh yeah,
New Roman is
what is the font family? Let's just go sans serif because I can't remember the system font stack. What?
Yeah, I think you might want to apply it to the body. So then maybe it's not worth doing right now at this point.
Yeah, it'll get gross. So we'll skip that. It's okay. We're gonna use Times New Roman today.
There we go.
All right. So the other thing that I think would be great here is if we were to. Oh, thanks. Somebody just posted the system font stack in the chat. So if we were to go in here and say we want to use, I want to use some MDX stuff. So I want to have this is some regular content, and this is some content that's important. Let me make that wrap, and needs to be in a box. This content does not. All right, what do I need to do to get this content into a box?
Yeah. So the first thing we'll probably want to do is just create an actual box component in source components. And from there, yeah, we'll just write it like a normal React component.
Okay. And is this going to be with children?
Yep, it'll be passing children to it, and then we can just make it like a div and give it like a, I don't know, background color, tomato. Tomato's my favorite.
Okay, so we'll do
named color.
A bit of padding and a background color of tomato. And then we should probably actually put the children in it.
Yep.
Okay, so we've got that, and then can I just import that?
Here we can just import the actual above. We can import box from source.
Components, box.
Yep, and then give a new line after the import, and then we can actually, just write box and close it after the content.
Oh, that is lovely. I mean, color-wise and also just like ease of use-wise, that was. I mean, I know that MDX gets touted around as being like this amazing thing, but like it really does live up to its own hype. I feel like the way that you can write content with MDX is like pretty seriously next level. And this did you were one of the original creator of MDX?
Yeah, I always just kind of say co-creator / co-author, but yeah, it was something that's, I guess, a handful of us sort of all kind of thinking, kind of collaborating in the same space, and this is sort of what came out. So yeah, it's awesome. Definitely like it draws from a bunch of other projects that have kind of implemented similar things, but kind of really boiled down the API to basically support imports, exports, and then JSX inline. So I think one of my favorite parts about it is just that it is like an authorable format. So like, similarly to like how you write Markdown or something, like it's a little different than your typical WYSIWYGs because it's, like you can kind of code it, like it's expressive and makes sense to you when you read it and write it. So you can get really wild with it too and kind of import, a chart component that like fetches dynamic data. Since it just renders React components, you can basically do anything, which is kind of cool.
So then, so let's do something real quick that I think will be cool. Let's do a new file. I'm going to do a source pages about. So I'm not going to override the index. I want to create a new page. And we're doing title case. How do I get the box here?
Yeah, so I think we're going to need to import it from the theme. And so this is one of those things where I think you can kind of really design the API however you'd like. But I think, a good way to do it is to kind of like export default as box from in that path. So that way, from the actual site, they can just import, the named box, do like a named import from Gatsby theme live stream.
Okay.
Now let's see. Wrap the important content.
Oh, it's lovely. So this is something that I struggled with. If anybody follows me on Twitter, you may have seen me posting hot tips about how hard it is to import and export things. So this is a really cool way to allow like normal usage. So you write your standard component, and you keep it in the components directory, and everything makes sense the way that you would expect it to. So locally, you just use it like this, but then you allow, by putting it here, for us to do these really nice things in userland, like pulling in, box as a named import just from the package itself. Because otherwise, if we didn't want to do that, we'd have to do like from source, components, box, and that just sucks. Like we don't want to do that. So it's better for there's obviously limits to what makes sense, but this is a really nice way of solving this problem where you have a set number of things available from the package, and you just import them and use them as needed. Okay, so Next thing, let's see. So there's a question here that's probably a good one. Several, actually. How would you add metadata to a page? Should we do that?
Sure, yeah. What kind of metadata are we thinking?
I think we want like a title, right? And if I'm remembering correctly, this just works, right? Like this will be available in MDX front matter?
Yeah,
Okay.
Gatsby MDX by default will also parse the front matter and yeah, like actually like expose it as props.
Okay, so let me do this real quick. What I'm going to do is pull up the graphical instance, and I'll make that big again. And what we will do is oops. So the great thing about these live streams is I have to like shuffle the video window all over the place. All right, so we're going to do all MDX. Wait, where does MDX come in? It's in here somewhere. Oh, it's under site page, isn't it?
Yeah, because it's being created at, well, actually, I haven't used MDX front matter from a page yet. So, because I think it's not being added to the all MDX because it's not being like programmatically created from posts or anything like that.
Yeah, let's do, I know it's in here. Because I know that, maybe I'm wrong. I thought we could do this. Let's do a site page, and we're gonna get path. And then what do we get? Context, and there we go. There we go. So you get it in the context of the page, and then that lets us get at the front matter. So we're able to kind of dig in here and see there. If I wanted to add more, I can. Does that update live? I think you got to restart it when you change front matter, which is kind of a bummer, but it's all right.
Yep.
But that being said, that's how you would get front matter in. There is a follow-up question. Are themes targeted more for agencies and theme builders? And they're saying, I'm trying to figure out how themes can fit in a big company with many teams and projects. You want to take the first crack at that one?
Sure. Yeah. Well, I think so. Ultimately, I really think that themes are sort of targeted for everyone that wants to like build sites. There's kind of like different layers to it. So themes are really valuable for like agencies, or like a large company that has a bunch of different like sites and properties that are kind of all over, because that way you can kind of create some base themes and share them around for like with like other teams, so you can kind of like only update your basic Gatsby config in one place, but you can also and then extend them from there. So if you have like a special docs theme that's for a a React library, you can add things like a playground editor or something like that. And so you can kind of, it gives you a much saner sort of base layer for things like if you have shared functionality and shared styling amongst like a handful of different properties. But I think where they're also sort of targeted as well is to make it, if you just want a blog and you just want to write some markdown in it and have it like already nicely designed for you and like kind of useful, we're kind of like targeting that use case as well. So you can kind of just get initialized similarly to like a starter, but now all you have to do is write markdown in your file, like your project basically just has a package JSON, a small Gatsby config, and then all your markdown files. So it allows you to kind of not have to see all that Gatsby is doing until you choose to look into it or customize your stuff. So it's really kind of like for end users that just want to build a fast, performant, pretty website, but it's also for those that kind of want to share base functionality and sort of everything in between.
Yeah, and a couple things that we're not really going to have a chance to touch on in this live stream that I think are just, like, in my mind, they're huge. You're going to be able to install multiple themes at once onto a Gatsby site. So if you have, you know, a blog, and you also want to run e-commerce, and you also need docs, you could install 3 themes that would set up the base structure for your docs, your blog, and your e-com. And then we're working now on ways to kind of share design tokens. So you'd be able to set like a primary brand color and some typography rules and stuff like that, so that you would be able to effectively install 3 themes, set design tokens in one place, and get this really like cohesive and multifunctional website with almost no work. You would just create a folder for your docs, a folder for your blog, and hook up your backend for Shopify or Stripe checkout or whatever it was you wanted to use. That's a huge possibility. The other thing too is that you're going to be able to, like, somebody asked a question, could you use this for a Squarespace-like product? And the answer is absolutely yes. So what's really cool about this is themes enable, like, you could become an entrepreneur based on Gatsby themes. You could build an Etsy-like product where people would upload their, you know, their products and they'd want to sell them. You create like a seller page theme, and all they have to do is upload their about info and some things like that. They could use whatever backend you want. You know, you could set, like, if you wanted to set this up where people would sell things through Stripe checkout, and you wanted to manage all of the content through like Sanity.io, you could build a theme that just does that. And then everybody who wants to go in, you would be able to, like, they could just go to your website, sign up for your service, and then fill out content on an admin UI. And in the background, your business would build a Gatsby theme using, or build a site using your theme that shows off their content in a way that you want it to. So the possibilities here are huge for reuse, for sharing, for kind of setting up whole new business models, right? So I think that, like, the potential here is so high. And I want to show you one of the things that makes this even more exciting. So John, I am in my theme, and I've decided that I don't like tomato. I want to use Rebecca Purple. How can I make that happen in my box?
Yeah, so there's kind of 2 ways you can approach it. One is you can use site metadata if you just kind of want to make it like expose you know, a handful of things, like maybe my branding color. But another way to do it, and this definitely works better in kind of like at scale for like more complex things, but you can kind of introduce design tokens. And so you can kind of like specify an object of the colors that you like want to use like throughout your site, and then allow the user to like override those. And so I guess maybe we can kind of run with that approach. If you'd like, we can create some design tokens.
Yeah. So I would just do this in, like, do you have a tokens file, tokens folder? How do you?
Yeah, you can kind of create like a tokens directory with a, like, you know, then where you can separate colors, font sizes, all that kind of stuff. Or, you know, you can just have like a big global theme.js. But I think we're kind of these days sort of arriving more towards using the tokens directory, because this pairs well with component shadowing. So that way, like, if you just want to override the colors, you can then like decide to override those, like, from the end user's perspective, which we can get into a little bit later.
Okay. And so what I'm going to do then is I'm going to switch this over, and we're going to import colors from, where is it? Here, tokens, colors, and I'm going to switch this to colors primary. Okay, so I've got that. Then I can, yes. Then what?
So I guess this will kind of introduce, I think, one of the most interesting features of themes as well. We had this concept of component shadowing. And so it's a way, or a lot of times, like, you'll install a theme, and then there's like a couple things you might want to change, whether that be the primary color. You know, here we want to change to Rebecca Purple, but also, like, perhaps maybe you want to sort of customize the header, or, you know, tweak the footer or something like that. You can actually use a specific naming convention, and then we will pick up that file like your local file instead of what the theme would be rendering. So here, like the naming convention works in your source directory. You create a directory that's named after the theme. So here we would have a, I guess, Gatsby theme live stream. And this, pretty much any file that you put in here will override what's defined in the source of your theme. Like, so in anything in that source directory you have Gatsby theme live stream will be like, you can override those. So here, like we'll try to override the colors file, so we can create a tokens colors file, and then instead export primary to be Rebecca purple.
Okay, so we've exported that, and now we're gonna have to dump the cache and start it over, right?
Yeah, that's something we're currently working on, but right now we're kind of overly aggressively caching the shadow stuff, so you kind of have to nuke the cache. But before we go stable, we'll of course have that fixed.
Mm-hmm. And so Guayam in the comment said that he can, or they can see this working really neatly with styled components or styled system. And I think that's our whole goal, right? Like that's what we're really after. Holy buckets, look at that. So that's maybe not the right color. Let's make this, let's just do hot pink. And that makes it more readable. So perfect. And so what we just did is, without having to rewrite our theme, we were able to change these colors. But we can go even further than that. Like we can replace the entire box, right?
Yep. Yeah, we can essentially, like, kind of whatever you want to do is, like, you know, it's all at your disposal, which I think it's pretty cool and pretty powerful. So we can kind of really override it. Like if we want to add a border and more padding to it, we can, you know, have the ability to do that.
Yeah, let's do it.
It's something that we'll support down the road too, because ideally, like if you want to sort of override all the things, you're kind of starting to sort of get into the territory of really kind of extending and kind of creating your own theme. And so we'll add in some type of API where you can sort of, you know, eject from it and just sort of then start kind of creating your own theme from the one that you like initially started with. So it could be really cool when you start to sort of, you know, find your own pattern and like kind of your own, you know, aesthetics. You can sort of just start from that base theme and change. So.
Oh, I just realized we've got a little bit of a snag here. We need to be able to get that primary color. So let's go up here, and I'm also going to export default as colors from source tokens colors. And now when I get into here, I can import colors from Gatsby theme livestream. And down here I can do colors primary. And also, just to, let's get this out of the way. Okay, so we've got that. Now I'm going to need to clear the cache again to get this to pick up. Yeah. So we're going to stop here, clear the cache.
Yeah, start someone asked, does it overwrite the whole thing or merge it? So it will actually just essentially overwrite it. So whatever your shadowed, like your shadowed file does, like that will just be picked up instead of whatever was defined in the theme. So it just completely overwrites it.
Yes, and we are working on solutions so that it does not require, so that you're able to merge it. That's something that we want to get fixed, but we're not there yet. So this is rad. Like, so I mean, and just to kind of restate the importance of what this enables, in a more complex theme, you're going to have things like you're going to be able to do like a full blog layout. You're going to have like your header, your author box, your category listings, your you know, the way you show site metadata, the SEO, all these different features that come into a site. And most of the time you don't need to touch much of that. Like, you know, you want to show the title of the post, you know, you probably want to show the featured image, you want to show the content, but maybe you want to like hide or add an author box. Maybe you want to add a call to action to like have somebody check out your newsletter or something like that. You'll be able to just go in and like update one component rather than having to completely rewrite the theme. You don't have to take all that code and start maintaining the whole code base. You just have to maintain the custom bits. That's a really, really powerful way to kind of move forward. So let's see here. We've got we've still got some time. Is there anything that you're like excited about that you want to show off?
Well, I think maybe one of the things we could do also is like add the MDX provider, and so we can kind of customize that H1 to, and then maybe that's the one we can give it a system UI font and maybe bump the size up a little bit. That might be something we can do.
How would I do that?
Well, I think probably the easiest way for now is to just go into layout. I think a lot of those times, you know, the more preferable architecture would be to kind of like have your providers live in a place that you then just kind of import and then wrap in your layout, but we can kind of just rock and roll with it. So the first way, I guess like the first step would be importing the MDX provider. And so you can do import MDX provider, and that will be coming from the MDX.js at MDX-JS/tag.
Oh, tag.
Yeah, and so tag's kind of like MDX core itself doesn't really necessarily know much about React aside from transpiling to it. And then MDX tag is sort of what actually takes over the rendering or what have you. And so what we can do now is actually also create like a components object, perhaps maybe on line 3. You can do a const components equals. And then from there, now just add an H1 key.
Is it capital or lowercase?
Lowercase. It maps to the rendered elements, like in the HTML element. And so here, like that, this will be a function that takes props as an argument. So yeah, we can just say props and then do an H1 and then give it some styling. So we can say like font family, system UI.
Yeah, let me grab that. That was in the chat here. Somebody posted it for us. Here. Is that going to work? I'm going to hope that works.
Yeah, it looks like it should. And then maybe do, like font size, something too, but make it giant.
Let's do what, 4? That's going to be ridiculous. And then do we need to? We do props.
Yep. So yeah, we'll also. So I think probably what I would recommend doing is just kind of nuking that last part, and just so we can just pass props as the splat or whatever. I can't remember what it's called when we ever first.
That one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I call it the splat, but I'm sure that is the wrong way to refer to it. And so now, we have this kind of component mapping, which when MDX is going through and handling all of its rendering, it will, instead of just doing the default H1, that's normally like, a React.create element H1 and then pass to the props, it will instead execute this function. And so we can wrap our section with MDX provider.
MDX provider.
And then say, components equals components.
Okay. And then is this like a render prop? Is it just it's just the children?
Yeah, it just does the children. So you can close that and then, and then move that to the bottom of the section. And so, yeah, just like that. We
maybe make that slightly less ridiculous.
Yeah. And then also, while we're at it, we could change the paragraph really quickly too to have a nicer font family if we wanted. But yeah,
let's do it.
Yeah, the idea of the MDX provider is you create this component mapping that will then just get picked up for all of your all of the like the different elements that might get rendered.
We can just set that to be a little bit easier to read. For this one, we're going to do almost exactly the same thing. So I'm going to do, well, let's just grab this and we'll edit it. We're going to do a paragraph, and we're going to make the font size 22 pixels. We like to be able to read. And there we go.
Yeah, there we go. And the the font isn't changing inside the actual box because MDX, like the mapping, doesn't pick that up because it just sees it as a JSX thing. So you'd have to sort of set it globally or actually in that box component itself. But that's kind
might even be. I don't even know if it's picking it up. Yeah, it doesn't even wrap it as a paragraph. So actually, let's see what happens if we go into the. Was it here? Yeah. Let's see what happens if we do that.
Yeah, fortunately, it won't change it. Though actually, Chris Biscardi is kind of working on a fancy little thing that might end up allowing us to make that work too, which is pretty cool. That'll be kind of a really nice additional feature to MDX if that gets working.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's the MDX provider. How that works, and yeah, so it's kind of cool. So hypothetically, as a theme author, you can have a directory of each of the different components that you're passing to MDX provider. And so then if the users sort of wanted to override the H1 and make it blue, they could just shadow that component, which is then going to be passed to all of your MDX files.
Right. So if we moved this out, in fact, why don't we just do that for a really quick proof of concept? Let's do a component. We're going to call this one h1.js. Import React from React, and we will export default. And there we go. So we can take that, and then we can import h1 from, where are we right now? h1. Yep. So this is kind of it's a little, okay. And so then if I go down here and I want to change that, I can do an h1.js, and I'll go let's just grab that straight out. But what I'm going to do is change the color. So we can import colors from Gatsby theme livestream, and we will make the color colors.primary. And because we've just shadowed, we got to go do the cache and start over. But once that starts up for us, uh-oh, I broke it. I broke it because I didn't bring over the system font. Let me grab that real quick.
Oh, yeah.
And this is a little sloppy, but we're just gonna pretend that I'm doing good code here.
You're doing a pretty good job. I'm impressed.
Okay, so now we've got a heading that's pulling in from our shadowed component, which is this one, and it's got our primary color coming out of the theme. So the possibilities for kind of customizing all this stuff are pretty kind of staggering when you start to think about what you can really accomplish with this without having to reinvent every wheel or manage an entire code base on your own.
Yep. Yeah.
Did we got about 25 minutes left. Do you want to do a child theme?
Yeah, may as well. Yeah, that should be enough time. We can knock it out.
Yeah, let's give it a shot. So maybe walk me through what needs to happen. So we've got our theme live stream, and we've got our site. So I need to create a new folder, and that's going to be, we'll just call it child.
Gatsby theme child, yeah.
And in this, I'm going to go into, oops, child, and I'm going to do a yarn init. Yes. Okay. And now in here, we've got Gatsby theme child. It's got a package.json. What do we, let's see, can we just pull some of this stuff over?
Yeah, we can kind of just
pull over the
copy
dev
pasta.
dependencies. Let's grab all of this. So we've got our dev dependencies and our peer dependencies. Do we need anything else from the parent theme, or can it pull the rest of that in?
It'll pull the rest of that in. The one thing we will have to add like a dependency as well of the Gatsby theme live stream.
Got it.
Give that we'll want that to be a dependency rather than a dev dependency.
Oh, okay.
We'll actually want to install that. So that way it will be installed like if you know, the end user installs Gatsby theme child. So it'll ignore the dev dependencies.
Okay. Did I do that correctly? No, I did not.
You got extra. There we go.
There we go. Just looking.
So then from there, looks like we have that all together. We'll just want to add a Gatsby config to the Gatsby theme child as well. And that will just be configured basically exactly the same way as the site itself, since that's calling, it's bringing in a theme. So like as a child theme, you can specify any number of other Gatsby themes. And then if you like, you know, like add additional plugins or, you know, kind of customize them and do all that good stuff. But yeah, so now we just need to run yarn in the root to make sure we do all the connections. Go ahead.
How do you feel about, let's set this up so that we can just run this with like a folder, like a docs folder.
Perfect. Yeah. So I think the first part, maybe let's just go change site. So it's pulling in the, this new child theme. And so, okay. And then we can run it just to kind of like, just make sure it's running like we expect and all the things are working. And then, yeah, we can start sourcing a new directory, which would be cool.
Okay, so we've got Gatsby theme config, we've got the package. Now, one thing that we did do in here is we're pulling from here. So do we need to get rid of all this stuff that we did to make sure that we don't break that when we're?
No, so it should, since Gatsby theme child has been installing Gatsby theme live stream, I think will just kind of all work. It'll just kind of keep working as we expect.
Cool. Do I need to, let's see.
Yeah, run yarn first to make sure that it's doing all the linking from the root. Yeah.
Okay. And then we can do yarn workspaces info, and we can see that live stream is not depending on anything, child is depending on live stream, and the site is depending on child. So we've got our links working properly, and then I'm going to run yarn workspace site develop, or do I need to clear the cache first?
I think you could just maybe just clear the cache just to be thorough, and then we'll run yarn workspace site develop.
Site cache, yep, okay. And
so
then we can run.
Fingers crossed, it all works magically live.
First try, live demos. Let's see. Nope. All right, what did we miss? Cannot find module Gatsby theme child. So did I spell something wrong? Let's see. Gatsby theme child, Gatsby theme child. We're in here. We've got Gatsby theme child. Site packages. Those aren't in there at all, so that doesn't matter. Yep. Somebody in the comments just called it out. We forgot to resolve the package.
Yeah, there we go.
Good
Thanks,
call. Thank you, Chris.
Nailed it.
Let's try that one more time. That's a gotcha for sure. All right, so this is now working, and we don't have our about page reading for some reason. Something missed. Something went weird. What's missing?
Something is awry. Let's see.
So we got our module.exports. We are extending the live stream theme. And we've got Gatsby config, pulling in the child. Did I spell it wrong? Did I spell experimental themes wrong in the child theme? Because that would be...
Experimental themes.
I think I got it.
Yeah, it looks correct.
Maybe I forgot to save this. Is there anything that I didn't save? That would be embarrassing if I just forgot to save the config file. I did just forget to save the config file. And let's make sure that that one still works. It sure does. So that was, that's my fault. All right, so then this is cool. So what we can do next then is, so my goal is that I can get rid of, I'd like to get rid of this whole thing. So if I can go back here, and I want to be able to install a theme, and all that happens is I have a Gatsby config, a package.json, and a folder called docs, and that's how I edit my site, right? So can we configure that in our child?
Yeah, so I think we should be able to essentially copy over everything that we have in source from the site, since that we're sort of currently shadowing. So as we have the, we can kind of, I think, just pull that puppy all the way over and paste it in here. We will need to source that about page if we wanted that to be in the theme, but this way, so now
I'm gonna drop that. Yeah, so all of our overrides are in place here on the child theme, which means that I'm going to drop this here. This is going to require us to kind of stop and restart. But let's see, we can, you know what, let's keep it. We'll keep our work. So I'm gonna put this over in the theme child so that we've got our about page. And then that allows me to delete this source folder altogether. So I now have no source folder. I've got the cache, which is generated by Gatsby, node modules generated by NPM, public generated by Gatsby. These are my two files so far. So let's clear that cache, get it running, and what we should see is absolutely no change. It should look exactly the same as it does right now.
Yeah, I think the one piece that we still are missing is we'll need to source the about page.
Headings must have content. I must have screwed something up there to get that. Oh, yep, you're right, because we didn't add the page creator.
So just like we set it up on the Gatsby theme live stream, we'll just also add that same Gatsby plugin page creator to point to this child theme's source pages as well.
Okay, so I can add a plugin and drop that in there. And then I need to add this to this theme. So we'll do a yarn workspace Gatsby theme child add Gatsby plugin page creator. So we have a question. What do we mean by shadowing in this context? John, you want to take that?
Yeah, so shadowing, it's kind of the way, I guess, the concept in Gatsby themes for overriding a component. So like in the context of the child theme, when we're shadowing some of the components that the Gatsby theme live stream exposes. And so when we do that, we're kind of saying, oh, because we've named this spot file in this particular way, use this component instead of the one that the original theme exposes. So it's kind of like it's sort of the override of a component.
Mm-hmm. And so to kind of show that practically, like we've got here in the Gatsby theme live stream, in the source directory, we've got tokens and then colors.js. And using the Gatsby theme's shadowing setup, we're able to create a folder with the name of our theme. So source Gatsby theme live stream, and then anything that we create here that matches a path in Gatsby theme live stream source folder will be overwritten. So we've got colors here, primary tomato. We do colors in the child theme and override primary as hot pink. And that means that Gatsby is going to shadow this component. So anything that includes this file is actually going to get this file. And that's what the shadowing means. So let's see. We've got, what do we got? We've got a theme live stream up and running. We've got our child theme up and running, and I can verify that by going to the About page. So there's our About page. So let's make it work with a folder full of stuff.
Looking now the docs folder, right, of MDX files. Yeah, so we'll need to then add the Gatsby source file system configuration. And so when you do this, we'll tell when Gatsby's building the site to look in the relative docs directory of the user.
Add Gatsby source file system. I'm going to look up these docs real quick just to make sure that we do this right. Gatsby source file system. And so we're going to save the Gatsby source file system, and in here we can point it to what we want to read. So going to resolve Gatsby source file system, and then in the options, I did spell that right, we are going to say we want, we name it and then we give it a path. Now there's something kind of special here that's going on. So I'm going to call this docs, and the path, I'm just going to put in docs, right? Because we don't want to make it relative to this directory.
Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, so because Gatsby, when it's executing and building all of the pages, the Gatsby source file system by default will look relative to where it's building. So like in this case will be the site. So it'll look right there for the docs.
Okay. And so once we've created that, I can go into my site and I should be able to create a docs, and let's say, let's call it, whatever, we'll call it home.mdx. And okay, so I've got a home page, and now if I clear my cache and restart this, this should just work, right?
No, so we're adding it to GraphQL land, but we'll need to actually then programmatically create those pages. Like if we wanted to
yes.
Create this. Maybe we could also just use the, I guess whichever approach we want, because we could also just use the page creator too and just automatically turn those to pages, or we can kind of, create those. Because hypothetically, if we wanted to create some type of docs nav, we would still want to use the source file system, so we can go create the pages and like construct the navs. Maybe we just want to do plugin page creator for the ease of use.
See, we've got 10 minutes, so maybe it would be better to not run too far over if we did that. Will it work with just a relative path like that?
I believe so. And if not, we can work around that.
All right, let's let's start here. We'll keep that just in case. And then we're going to go to page creator, and I'm going to give it docs. And let's see, docs home MDX. Let's clear that cache. Okay, I already did that. Let's develop. Oh, this is the one we want. Okay, I broke something. Must set the absolute path. Okay, so that doesn't look like it's going to do what we want.
Can we do require.resolve there to make it, to tell it to give it the full path? I think we can do, require.resolve and then do the relative, docs. And so then it knows that will specify the entire path from root.
Okay, didn't like that, but that might just be something I did. Cannot find module docs. Docs home.mdx.
Oh, because require.resolve is looking. So I think actually here we can do path.resolve. No. Trying to remember.
Should we just try to whip out a node, Gatsby node to programmatically generate?
I think we could do that pretty quickly because we just have to pull in the query for the docs.
All right, so let's do this. We're going to do a Gatsby node.js, and I'm going to restart this again so we've got our GraphQL layer. What?
Maybe we want to just run yarn again real quick.
Yeah, I wondered. Well, hold on, because it didn't show up in the.
Oh yeah.
Weird. Yes. I swear I ran this.
I thought you did too. Oh yeah, I think maybe we didn't.
We thought about it and it never actually happened.
Yeah.
Okay, so we've got our site developing, no rapid crashes, that's good. And let's see, got it. Let's go to graphical. And we will do all file, or do we want all MDX or all file here? Probably all file.
Well, I think we can. Yeah, we'll do all file, and that will. Then we can specify that we want it to be docs.
And we'll do edges, node, and in here we can do. Start by just doing relative path and make sure that that's actually going to work. I did it wrong because that's supposed to be an equals, and let's try that instead. Did I get that wrong?
Well, let's see.
Source instance name is what I meant, I think. Yeah.
Yes.
So source instance name maps to this, which is what I was trying to search by. So I just want all the files that match in that particular thing. And so what do we need? What do we need for our Gatsby node?
Yeah, and so right now, since we're using MDX files, we'll need to pull out the child, and I think it's child MDX. Yeah, so when we source all these files, Gatsby MDX already knows how to process them, and we'll actually go through and compile them and everything. But so like it depends on what we want to grab. But the base thing that we do need is code and then body. And so, and this is then what we can pass when we create the pages for the MDX renderer. And so here, yeah, that's kind of like the raw thing that we'll need. And so you don't necessarily need to care too much about like what that's doing, but that's sort of the, and so yeah, we'll want the any other metadata for creating the page, which I think will be.
Yeah, I'm trying to think how we want to create the file
we'll want
name
the
here.
Path.
That's what I want. I'm just gonna use this and be nice and lazy about it because that's what we got time for today. So let's, anything else? Name, and we've got the body, and we can build the pages from that.
Yeah, and so we'll just need to then create one more component that will basically do the rendering. And
Okay.
so in source, we can kind of do a template.
Okay, so in source, we're gonna do a template, and this is gonna be, call it docs. This is gonna be a React. Okay, then what happens?
And then, so we'll want to, where is the, so when we create the page, we're gonna need to use the component or the MDX renderer so that we can import that directly from Gatsby MDX. And so I think it doesn't expose it as a named import, at least from my example here, but it's Gatsby MDX / MDX hyphen renderer.
Got it. Okay. And then do I just return that like this?
Yep. And so it'll, I guess, what we'll pass into it, like we can just call it kind of a code as like the prop. And well, so I guess we'll code as the prop, yeah, to our export default there. That will be the prop we're passing, kind of like children, but we'll call it code. And then we'll just give code as the children to MDX renderer, so we can just, yeah. And so this will then
and
render it.
That's it.
Page. Yeah, and so now the one part that we'll still need to do is actually add in our like a page query as well. So when we pass in, like we can just basically tell it the name of the file that we're looking for. When we programmatically kind of create that, and then we can use that to query.
Okay, and I'm just trying to get the, let's see here. I already saved that one, so I want to get the, what do you want me to grab?
So we're gonna want to grab I guess the file with the particular name, where source instance name is.
Well, I think we actually pulled the name.
Yeah.
And so we would do an equals, and I think it came back as home. It did.
Yeah.
And so if we then get the, what did you want?
I think it's child MDX code body. And that's what we then have to pass to MDX renderer to render the file. So yeah, that'll.
Oh, okay. I'm sorry. So what you're saying is in Gatsby node here, what we're getting, this is what we're going to loop through to create pages?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Or are you wanting to run that on the template?
Well, I guess we can kind of do it either way, can't we? I guess it depends on your preferred route. Yeah, because we can pass that as context. I'm being dumb.
Okay, so let's do that. Let's do page context, and we can do page context .code. And we'll skip that step so we don't have to write queries. And then here we can do, let's see how much I remember, export create pages, and that's going to give us GraphQL and actions. And in here, I'm going to make this async because I don't want to do a promise chain. So I'm going to do const result equals await GraphQL, and that's going to be a function. And then I'm going to grab this, and we're going to drop that right in here. And what comes back, and I'm writing this kind of sloppy, like no error checking or anything, so, you know, buyer beware. And then what I can do is I can say my pages are result.get dot, what is it? Data dot all file dot edges. And then we can map those, and that's going to give us a node that I'm going to return directly. And I think that is going to work. So basically what I'm trying to do right now is I'm loading all of the files which we did over here, right? So we're grabbing each of these files, and what we want to get back is this is what MDX uses to actually render the page. And so my hope here is that in doing this, we're simplifying the result. I might be wrong on this one. Let me do the object keys dot result. And that way, if I'm wrong, we'll be able to figure out how very quickly. But so what I'm then doing is I'm just grabbing the actual nodes, which is this part here, so that we just get an array of the name and the child MDX, because this is what we really need. And then down here, I can do a pages dot for each page, and then I'm going to be able to run actions dot create page, which is something that comes in from Gatsby. And create page is an API that we can use that I always get wrong, so I'm going to look it up real quick.
Yeah, it's definitely a Google one to check it each time. That's for sure.
So let's see, we've got create pages. That's going to lead me to create page. And so it's path, component, and context. And I always, always, always confuse that. So our path is going to be the page.name. Our component is going to be require resolve. Is that right?
Yep, require.resolve, the template.
And I'm going to get source, templates, and docs. And the context is going to be code equals page dot
child mdx dot code dot body. Yeah.
Child MDX, that's right. Child MDX dot code dot body. I'm going to rename that. I don't like. It's confusing to change it from code to body, so we'll just call it body, and we're going to save this. I'm going to come back over here and fix that to body, and fingers crossed this works first try.
Fingers crossed. We'll see.
One take.
Looks right to me. Can't possibly be a bug.
Oh yeah, I got that right. Okay, so I have an accessibility problem that I think is just because we're not returning content. We're like using the props to spread the children. So I think this might be a false positive here. So let's see, where am I going? I'm going back to here. And if everything works, oh my goodness. So that's pretty awesome. And so what that means now is that if I am working on this site, all I have is a Gatsby config, a package.json, and a docs folder. And if I add another one, let's... And I can come over here, let's go to something. And so we're off to the races without any code, without any real configuration here. So, I mean, that we're a little bit over time, so I think we can start wrapping up. But like, John, thank you so much for taking time to look at this stuff with me. I think it's incredible.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. That was fun. We actually got through what we hoped for and only 4 minutes late.
Yeah, I'm super excited about this. So here's what I'll do next. I'm going to we're going to export this video to YouTube. So if you came in halfway through, if you missed things, you want to watch it again, it's going to be on YouTube later today. I'm also going to clean up these repos that we created, and I'll just publish. I'll probably just publish the whole like workspace setup so that you can download it and run it the same way that we ran it as we built it. If you have any questions, like please reach out to us. Reach out to John. He is on Twitter as Alpine in Leet, which is wonderful.
Only partial lead though, because I suck at personal branding.
But yeah, please go follow John. You know, get in touch with him for sure. He's very smart. He's I think one of the kind of unsung heroes of web development, as Joel Hooks likes to call him. But yeah, please follow us, ask us questions. We really want to see what you're building with themes. So if you build a theme, tweet at us, send it to us, give us links to the repos. We want to see it, and definitely you know, follow along with development. We're going to be tweeting about it. It'll be on the Gatsby blog. All sorts of good things here. If you want a good starting point, here's a blog by Chris Biscardi. It goes through kind of what themes are. There are a couple follow-ups on how child theming works and various other updates. But yeah, we appreciate you coming in. Thanks for watching with us, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, thank you, everyone.